This is a key to worksheet number 2, and again, you're simplifying each radical, and these are all going to be square roots. And then with the variables, we're going to assume that the variables all represent positive numbers, so that way we don't have to worry about absolute value in the answer. Okay, so number 1, we have the square root of 100 divided by 81. So square root of 100 divided by 81. Now remember, in this case, you need to rewrite this using a quotient rule. And so the quotient rule says that when you have a square root of a quotient, you can write this as a quotient of the individual square roots, just like this. And so notice that both of these are perfect squares, and so I'm going to get the square root of 100 is 10, and the square root of 81 is 9. So the answer number 1 is 10 ninths. Okay, number 2, using the quotient rule again, I'm going to get the square root of 12 25ths is going to be the square root of 12 divided by the square root of 25. All right, now you got to simplify each one of these. And so the denominator is easy because 25 is a perfect square, so that's going to be 5. The numerator, let's think about this. The square root of 12, what's the largest perfect square that goes into 12? Well, that's going to be 4, so I can rewrite this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 3 using a product rule. And so the square root of 4 is 2, so I'm going to get 2 square root of 3 divided by 5. And I cannot simplify the square root of 3 because the only perfect square that goes into 3 is 1. So the answer to number 2 is 2 square root of 3 divided by 5. All right, number 3, we have the square root of x to the 8th divided by 81 y to the 10th. All right, so again, using the quotient rule, I'm going to rewrite this as the square root of x to the 8th divided by the square root of 81 y to the 10th. Now the numerator is easy because that exponent is even. You're dealing with square roots, so the index here is 2. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, so it's going to be x to the 4th. Not the square root of x to the 4th, because the square root of x to the 4th is not the same as the square root of x to the 8th. And it makes sense because x to the 4th times x to the 4th is x to the 8th. Okay, so and then the denominator, I'm going to rewrite this as the square root of 81 using a product rule times the square root of y to the 10th, and then simplify each one of these. So here, okay, so the numerator is x to the 4th. The denominator, square root of 81, is 9, and this is even, so the square root of y to the 10th is y to the 5th. And so that's the answer there. So number 3, the answer is x to the 4th divided by 9y to the 5th. So x to the 4th divided by 9y to the 5th. All right, number 4, we have the square root of 27 x to the 3rd power divided by 25 y to the 6th. So again, using a quotient rule, I can rewrite this as the square root of 27 x to the 3rd divided by the square root of 25 y to the 6th. And the denominator is the easy part here. So in the denominator, because both of those, well, let's just go ahead and rewrite this. So using a product rule in the numerator, that's going to be the square root of 27 times the square root of x to the 3rd. And the denominator is going to be the square root of 25 times the square root of y to the 6th. Now what I was saying was that the denominator is easy because the square root of 25 is a perfect square, so that's just 5. The denominator, the exponent here is even, so 6 divided by 2 is 3, so it'll be y cubed. So that's going to be the denominator. The numerator, I got to deal with this. Now 27 is not a perfect square, but what's the largest perfect square that goes into 27? So that's going to be the square root of 9 times the square root of 3 using a product rule. 9 times 3 is 27. And remember, this is odd, so remember you got to rewrite this as the largest exponent that's the largest even exponent that's less than 3. That 2 goes into, that's why we said even, so it'll be the square root of x squared times the square root of x. Now you got to simplify whichever one of these you can. So I can simplify the square root of 9, I can simplify the square root of x squared. I cannot simplify these two, the square root of 3 and the square root of x. So I'm going to get 3 times the square root of 3 times x times the square root of x. divided by 5y cubed. Now again, do not leave your answer like this because you know, according to the product rule for square roots, that the square root of 3 times the square root of x, I can write as one square root. So it'll be 3x, 3 times x, times the square root of 3x, divided by 5y cubed. And so that's the answer to number 4. So number 4, we have 3x, square root of 3x, divided by 5y cubed. All right, and then finally, number 5, we have, all right, so let's see. Let me go ahead and rewrite number 5 here. So number 5, we have the square root of 32, x to the 4th times y, divided by 49. Now again, according to the quotient rule, I can rewrite this as the square root of the numerator, 32, x to the 4th, y, divided by the square root of the denominator. Now the denominator is the easy kind because 49 is a perfect square. So that's going to be 7 in the denominator. 7 times 7 is 49. And I'm going to use a product rule here. So that's going to be the square root of 32 times the square root of x to the 4th times the square root of y. Now, we got to simplify this as much as we can. Now, I want you to notice that I cannot simplify the square root of y because the exponent is 1 and 1 is less than 2. But I can simplify this one because that's even. And I can simplify this because the largest perfect square that goes into 32 is 16. So I'm going to get this. I'm going to get the square root of 16 times square root of 2. So that's the square root of 32. And then let's go ahead and simplify this now. So the square root of x to the 4th is x squared, right? And then I cannot simplify the square root of y. Okay, let's talk about the square root of 16. I can simplify that. That's 4. All that's being divided by 7. Don't forget that. And so I get 4. I cannot simplify the square root of 2. I have x squared. I cannot simplify the square root of y. Divided by 7. Now again, don't leave your answer like this because you know that according to the product rule for square roots, that since the indices are the same, square root, I can write this as one square root. Just multiply the radicands together. So I'm going to get as an answer 4x to the 4th. Always put the square root at the end times the square root of 2y. See, if you put x to the 4th at the end, it may look like x to the 4th is under the square root, and you will not get full credit. All right, and so that's the answer to number 5. So number 5, the answer is 4x squared, times the square root of 2y divided by 7. All right, so that is the key to worksheet number 2.